This video is getting near the end of, I think, the necessary communication of my observations concerning Annie Maxim House and the basic problem that's existent here as a result pretty much of Christina's psychological not so good functioning. And so I'm not going to beat a dead horse here. I'm just saying that this video, I think, contains a very different perspective from what I've said before, indicated before. And I think it will be useful in addressing this situation that's ongoing, or will be ongoing regardless of whether I'm here or not. And I also want to note that it may be overlooked but all these videos require a great deal of time, and I do have other things to do besides getting evicted and dealing with that and all that stuff. I have very serious matters that I'm involved in that kind of pretty much nobody knows about. I don't mind saying what they are, but other people, many other people really are relying on me to complete various projects as regards to their welfare and et cetera, and whatever. I mean, just, and this has been a month now, then I haven't been able to address any of those people's issues or do things that people are interested in and could really use. So I just want you to know that I don't make these recordings in a capricious manner, but I think that something really needs to be done here at Annie Maxim House for the residents and staff. Today is December 6th, 2019, about 6 p.m. in the evening. I was just thinking things over as I'm getting ready to move, and I was recalling something in the termination of residency that was given to me on November 7th by the board at my door with Christina, board of director. And there's one paragraph in there, the only thing that talks about me, my behavior, whatever. And it says, "It has come to the attention of the AMH board of directors that there have been several instances where you have demonstrated an inability or unwillingness to uphold AMH's expectation that you conduct yourself in a manner that shows courtesy and respect to other residents, and also to the staff at AMH. There have been several instances where you have chosen to ignore rules and policies set by AMH. This includes blah, 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 blah." Then the last paragraph, "Accordingly, the board of directors hereby terminates your occupancy effective upon your receipt of this letter. We would expect that you would remove your belongings today." This was delivered without warning. I've been here 10 years. At 2 p.m. that day. Actually, the first sentence, or on several instances, actually, Christina has come into my apartment terribly emotionally aroused 25 times, actually, the number is. Give or take one or two. I'm losing track. And half the time, she's literally lambasted me emotionally, sometimes far worse, sometimes a little less. And when she's been lambasting me at least 50% of the time and more, she has been totally unable to hear anything. It's one of those things where a person is so upset, as in Sergeant Peterson's when he barged into my apartment at the wellness visit, and as you heard in the recording, and he wouldn't even allow me a word or a question. He was so upset he had to demand me to be quiet. And Christina was in the same mood. the board of directors, notice a sentence that says there have been several instances where you have demonstrated. Now, that's according to, realize they never visited with me. They had never been present at any of these instances that they don't name, and neither had the executive director who had reported these things to them been present. And all of those 25 times, Christina had never been present at any of the instances. What had happened is somebody had gotten upset, gone to Christina. Christina had come to me, never asked me one question about what had happened. Further, she didn't know from this person who got upset what I had actually said, because she reported to me that I had said such and such and such and such on some occasions when she did happen to have something in mind that I had purportedly said, and it wasn't true. In some cases, it was just the opposite. And yet she was representing it to herself and the board, perhaps, that her impression of what this upset person said was true, even though it wasn't. Why do I know? Because I was present, and I was the only other person present with that resident or staff member who was present. So, what actually is going on here? The board of directors believes something that they believe is true, and it is something at which they have never been present nor seen. And yet they say this thing has been demonstrated. It has been demonstrated that I was unwilling or incapable of acting in a certain manner that the person who the executive director hadn't been present at, and it was the impression of a person who was very upset enough that they couldn't handle things on their own, that they had to go to the executive director. You see what's happening? And the executive director has adopted that person's emotional impression and hasn't investigated the situation with that person, as to what they thought I had actually said, about what they thought I had actually done, etc., right? So the executive director is very incompletely informed about that one particular person's position. The executive director has incomplete knowledge and information that could have been gathered from that resident and might have assisted in the executive director understanding what actually had happened. Of course, if you have, as the executive director has stated, that sure, it takes two to tango, but she doesn't live by that. She has an incomplete picture of somebody else's impression, and she doesn't have even what might be called factual things from that resident or person who's upset. You understand? I mean, if somebody's upset, it's already questionable that they will have understood very completely what had happened. And of course, without asking the important questions, like, what did he actually say? What were his words? Exactly. What did he do physically? Is this accurate? And what did he mean? See? And I can't remember one time that the executive director ever came into my apartment and had a clear understanding of what the upset person actually said, did, or what was actually going on with that person. You see? Christina is so incompletely informed herself about that resident or staff member, because Christina herself adopted the emotional reaction immediately, and many of us see this in her. And she has often expressed the point of view that, in fact, she was actually there, or that her feelings were hurt by what I said, even though I said nothing about her. One case in point where Glenda and Lynn overheard a private message to Annette, and they immediately went to Christina to say how upset they were and how hurt they were, and Christina called me how upset she was. Yet I said nothing about any of them. I was just commenting on the poor quality of the delivered food that I'd been given, and they hadn't made it. It had been made by Turks. So, see what I'm saying? So, yeah, so that's the first thing about the situation. And this type of thing is the only thing that Christina, the executive director here, could possibly have reported, because she never asked me on any of those occasions what was my point of view or what I actually said. So, the only thing that the board had to go on, and they accept it as being true, and they believe that what they believe is in fact a fact, and it is something that has been accurately reported to them that they can rely on, to terminate a 10-year resident here without warning, because they apparently had drafted such a letter before March 7th, and this is November 7th, so I hadn't been warned that they were considering me for eviction, yet they knew it. You see, they just have really misrepresented themselves and the situation. It doesn't cast them in a good light. I can see why they would want to do that kind of thing. This thing about showing courtesy and respect. Well, obviously one of these residents or staff felt disrespected. Well, I don't know what. There have been 25 times. There must have been all kinds of circumstances, and what are you talking about? Christina feels disrespected at the drop of the hat. That has nothing to do with her. Is she in any position emotionally to saying these things? And I'm not sure. But what the board felt that I had shown disrespect, when in fact maybe it wasn't reported as such. You see, there's too much ignorance here going on, and nobody has yet consulted with me about any of this stuff. You see, and even today, I'm getting ready to leave as a result of this garbage, basically caused by Christina. Really, and the board, I don't know why they believe her, but I know she's believable. I understand that. But why somebody didn't come to me? I've been here 10 years. Why didn't one of the board ever come by and say, how you doing? We're hearing all these reports about you. I just came here to find things out, because, we're getting to the point where we're thinking about maybe asking you to leave. Doesn't that seem to be like a quality thing to do? But why did the board do what they did? I'm not sure that Christine is the only part of the problem here, honestly. Anyway, so the letter goes on to say that there have been several instances where you have chosen, you have chosen to ignore rules. You have chosen to ignore rules and policies. Somebody, must have gotten into my head to, for obvious reasons. He's a friend of mine. And he's a friend of mine because he doesn't accept Christina's point of view. And so he's not colored to believe that all this stuff that's going on around here. And that's one of the reasons Annette had to leave, is because Christina has allowed this environment to be here. It has been so destructive that she couldn't handle it. She tried to be in her apartment alone, and she and I talked many times about it. And I sat with her many evenings trying to build her emotional state up and a balance so she could go back out to the dining room the following day. And yet Christina and everybody here accuses me that I'm the reason that Annette had to leave Annie Maxim House and go in the hospital. But I'm telling you, I am the only friend of her here. I was responsible for her being here as long as she was here, could stand it being here. I sat with her after you guys essentially allowed the atmosphere that tore her down week after week after week. And she would no longer go even to do puzzles, which she liked, because of you guys, not because of me. It didn't matter how upset she was with because of what she imagined or with anything here. It didn't matter. I saw she was upset, I would knock on her door. And it didn't matter how upset she was. I said, "Can I come in? Can we talk?" She would say, "Yes." Every time. She never refused. Did any of you know this? You're responsible for my losing the dearest friend I had for 10 years here. You are responsible, and I am so angry with you. But you are just ignorant people, and as such, just barking dogs, as far as I'm concerned. And Sergeant Peterson came in and berated me because I had a wellness check for Annette. And in fact, she was in the hospital. Thank you very much, all you guys at Eddie Maxim House. I don't care what you think. I lost the dearest friend I had for 10 years. It's just, I'm not sure everybody really wants to go this direction, honestly. If you run on ignorance, it's going to end up it's going to end up places that you're not going to want to be. That's all I'm saying. That's guaranteed. There's no other way for that to be. So this is my take on this, that the board of directors believe something, and they have adopted that it's true, and it's one-sided. That's a fact. It's not an opinion. It's a fact, I mean, you can say anything you want, and you can argue with this at all, but that is a fact. That Christina has never been present, and she's incompletely informed herself about the person's report of whatever. So she has incomplete hearsay. 3 people's opinions, and you've got to investigate fully each person's opinions and point of view. So when you put them together, you can accurately and responsibly assess what might in fact been the case. And then you can run that by those individuals involved and say, what do you think about this? See? Now this is a responsible way before you go reporting this to the board, so the board will be accurately understanding what you have done, what information you have gathered, people's points of view, you see? And if you do this, maybe you'll come to the conclusion you don't need to go to the board. Maybe you could handle it on your own, Christina. These opinions, these emotional conclusions that Christina has allowed within herself to form from being or having incomplete, one-sided, etc. information has been described. The executive director, in addition to reporting this incomplete, uninformed, uninvestigated, one-sided hearsay to the board, has conveyed the same thing about me to the staff, as well as the other residents here. And I want whoever's listening to know that Christina has not conveyed accurately the truth of the matter about me. She was never present at any time of any of those things, nor has she ever asked me what I did, I actually said, etc. The staff and the residents blame me for one thing after another, even though many of those haven't been present any more than Christina, and have adopted the position, as Christina did about herself, that as though they had actually been present, and took it personally that I had personally insulted or stuck them with a stick, even though they weren't there and there was nothing said about them, nor about Christina. You know, I took Richard aside the other day and pointedly made the comment. I stopped him in the middle of the parking lot. I said, "Look, Richard," I said, "have I ever called her a bad person?" He said, "No, you haven't." I said, "But I have always described her behavior as being destructive. Is that correct?" He said, "Yes." I said, "I just want to make the point that there is a difference here. And that difference is very important to me, and that you know this. And you can't make it up. I could fix Annette. I could, quote, fix her easily, but nobody else knows how to do that. Her sister, or whoever took her away, the hospital, I saw her, Annette, when she got out of the hospital, she looked like she was on medication. She looked in terrible shape. She looks like so emotionally defenseless and torn down. Why? After she'd been in the hospital. If she'd been in my presence for 60 minutes, she'd been up and running. You guys are so incompetent. And the hospital, you don't realize how incompetent you people are. And how are you going to fix her? You can't. You don't know how. You think that I'm the problem. If she goes to a psychiatrist, psychologist, the first thing they're going to say is, why? Sean was, and so you start off on that foot, anybody who's trying to fix her, and I'm talking fix, she needs to be fixed. It's just like a broken down car, The computer software needs to be updated, it's got a glitch in it, Now she's been told that I'm the problem, She, like other residents here, they have their own perspective. And when a resident will sit and listen to another perspective, it doesn't mean that their perspective was wrong, but it may mean that parts of their perspective were incomplete. They didn't know some things, and so therefore it changes matters. It's just like a physical observation from one position. It looks like there's Zeus is killing Aphrodite. You look at it the other direction, and it looks like there's a turtle, swimming in the seaweed. That's how those things are. And if you don't know how to fix that kind of stuff, well, there are not that many people that do, even professionals. But I have such a relationship with Annette that I could easily fix her, because that's all. She's just got some misconceptions within herself about some things. I don't know what they are. I don't know what they are. But I can tell, looking at her as a human being, that she's not functioning right, Yeah, she probably should be on an antidepressant because she's given up on life in certain ways that I don't think are necessary or appropriate for her. But, she's indicated that that's the way she likes things, so okay. But that has nothing to do with her having to leave Annie Maxim House. But I'm going on about this because I want to put this down. I think it's time that, I've got to say some things, because the ignorance here is rampant, and it's, it's destroying people's lives. I mean, Annette is a good example. I mean, you know, given the ignorance that surrounds her and where she is now, the chances of her ever recovering in the rest of her life are probably very close to zero. And given the nature of the vulnerability in her health and her age and where she is and how sensitive she is to emotional discord and those kinds of things, which I don't see any recognition of that here at Annie Maxim House, really. I mean, in terms of anybody doing anything, you know, never heard of anybody helping her out in any way in any of this stuff, even though it was obvious. You know, I'm really pissed off at the ignorance here. And, you know, it's one thing to be ignorant barking dog, and it's another thing to bite people and then say, oh, it was Joe over there who caused me to bite. You know, I just fed up with you guys. God, fed up. Jesus. What damage did some people's lives you guys cause? What damage? Jesus. I mean, it's real. It's real. It could cost Annette her an early death. You understand that? I've mentioned that before. You've put her in a position now where it's almost impossible for her to recover or to get anybody who could understand the situation, because they're going to listen to the people who are around her. And those people have heard it from Christina and Annie Maxim House, that I'm responsible. And so that's what those people will believe. You know, I mean, how are you going to deal with somebody if you don't have the right information? You start off on the wrong foot. You know, how are they going to find out what actually did go on, you know, given all that? You'd have to be an exceptional therapist to see what's actually going on. It's just, you know, totally impossible. And you guys have put in that position. I could fix her in 60 minutes. I could straighten that thing out in 60 minutes. But you guys won't let me near her. And given what she believes from you guys now, she wouldn't want to. Yeah, you could talk her into it, because she would listen. If you said, oh, Sean really like to talk to you, you know. But you guys don't trust me. Why? Because you're not trustworthy. You're not trustworthy enough to gather the information that's there right in front of your eyes, and you're not paying attention to it. So this is just a straightforward psychiatric projection. That's all it is. This is what is within you, and this is how you project things. See? It's not in me. I don't see a problem here. I see a solution. I know how to do it. I know perfectly well. I've done it many times with her. Well, it's so easy when you gather information about people, you know. You guys don't gather information about people. You jump to emotional conclusions at the first drop of a hat. All of a sudden you know exactly what went on, and you don't. Well, I've carried on a long time about that, but she's a dear friend of mine, and I owe it to her. Other residents feel the same way about me because of Christina, because no residents have ever sat down with me and said, oh, I heard about such and such, and I was kind of concerned about such and such, but you were there. Well, what actually happened? What did you say? And, you know, they said this, and what did you say? You know, see, nobody has ever sat down, because that's the environment here that Christina has engendered because of her condition of her psychology. This is what she's doing here. Other residents don't gather information. Otherwise, they'd have some information. I mean, who knows what they would do with it? You know, but at least if you got two people, you get both people's perspective. Three people's perspective. There's just no other way around that. So in the end, Christina's way she is and the environment she engendered here is responsible for not only one person leaving, but two, Annette and now me. Now, they look like they're different, don't they? Oh, the reason Sean's leaving is such and such and such and such. The reason Annette is leaving such and such and such, such and such and so and so. But actually, the root cause is Christina's problem. And other residents have told me they don't have the insight, etc., experience that I do to say it's probably a borderline personality disorder. And everybody's getting slimed because of it. But they do know that she has got a problem. They do recognize that her condition is affecting other people around her, so they have the same perspective as she does, kind of thing, like contagious of flu or something. It goes from one person to another. They do see this, the mechanics of it anyway. Anyway, I think that, I can only do so much. I can just report things from my point of view, and I try to make it as reasonably void of personal feelings as I can, to just be descriptive. This seems to be the most useful way to make any kind of a change, which is the bottom line here as far as I'm concerned. I may, be leaving, but at least for the residents that remain, the social environment here can be restored somewhat to back at what it was with Rachel and Karen, and as other people have experienced this. And anyway, even if I'm gone, I can at least look back and see that Christina has been removed, because I don't think that if she's a borderline personality disorder, I mean, that's a very difficult thing to deal with while if she's already having trouble with the job here, and trying to do personal therapy is a very difficult, concomitant thing. And another note that I think might be useful is that when recently, in the last few months, there have been a couple of things that I've seen Christina, because I hardly ever see her. And I've seen her on 3 occasions when she was dealing. One was the plumbing, another with when she was here and asked if she would mind this whole session being recorded when everybody else did, and one other time. And what I remarked with the plumbing, for instance, I saw her face. I wasn't out. I just happened to walk by somewhere, and I saw her face, and it was so gaunt, more thin, and her emotional. She looked very unhealthy. I don't know, beset by some very heavy emotions of some kind. That she was concerned, and I asked Dee in the morning. I said, "Is something wrong with Christina? And Dee said, "It's the plumbing." And I just thought, well, that's very odd. Considering you just call out the Roto-Rooter and let him go down the line. And then the fact that Christina, I heard, did a little dance with the staff when they finished doing the problem. I think, are you kidding me? I mean, I don't understand. I put in too many plumbing lines to dance. Roto-Rooter problems in the house. Just why would one dance? I mean, was there any question that this thing would be worked out? I mean, really. And then the other time when she was there with the police, and I asked, we're recording this, Christina, would you mind if we record it? And she just got this, she got all screwed up, and just this angst. Everybody said, Sean, why did it have to degenerate to this? Just that kind of why. And I don't, everybody there was going, hey, let's record it. That's fine. And all of a sudden with her, it's just kind of an emotional, geez, I don't know. Gosh, such a decision and the impact, and why you, Sean, I mean, I'm going, oh, good Lord. And so, and this thing with the electrical inspection, we were just talking about the circuit panel, and she just got this, this angst of, difficulty of just, well, I think the electrician should decide whether you can turn the breakers on or off, And there's Mel, experienced handyman. What? I mean, what's going on here? I mean, you got a light switch on the wall, you got a circuit breaker, you turn them on and off. I mean, that's the way it is. There's no legal problem. They're supposed to be there like that. So I'm looking at this, and this is kind of different now in previous years. And I'm wondering if there isn't some kind of progression going on here of her disease or condition. You see, I'm not kind of trying to cast aspersions here. I'm trying to give a little insight, historical insight of somebody who's been observant of her behavior for more than 3 or 4 or 5 years now, wondering what's going on with her, because it wasn't so obvious as it is now. And I'm wondering if, and she also does, it's very familiar, she has this knock that she comes to the door and she goes, Sean, can we talk? And other residents experience the same thing. It's kind of a standing joke. However, if one looks at this in the same light of her emotionally, she's a bit distraught because it sounds like something that she's repressing, that she's got something she's got to tell you about yourself, that she has difficulty, and she's trying to repress this, instead of coming to your door and saying, Sean, hey, listen, somebody was saying, can I ask you some questions about what's going on? I'm trying to understand something. No, she doesn't have this emotional balance of equanimity, you see. And so I'm wondering, here's what I'm getting to. I'm wondering if that, and, she has to do breathing exercises. She's told me on 3 occasions in her office to relax and calm down in the middle of her business days, according to her words. 3 occasions separated by some months, in order to deal with the pressure of the job. Now, I've made joke about this before, but I think this may be a useful insight, putting all this stuff together, that let's say her ego or self-image needs to be of a certain kind for her to appear emotionally balanced and well-meaning and all those things that all of us want to do and be a self-image of such, and to other people as well. But I think that emotionally, her ego or self-image is kind of like the lid of a pressure cooker. And that pressure is building up to the point that she can't keep the lid on so well anymore. And it's starting to leak out into her consciousness, so to speak, that, that there's something that's getting out of hand. It's kind of a limbic feeling, that she's kind of losing control. And it's, her condition is, in fact, so serious that it's really impacting her now for very simple things, that it's hard for her to keep this from herself, that these things that she's been trying to repress which is obvious in her voice and etc. She's not going to be able to do it much longer, or it's getting more and more obvious, causing her more and more distress. And we may be seeing a progression of this disease or something, because that is what happens with progressions. And I don't know that this is the case, but just this may be useful to somebody who's might be trying to assess her. It's just, it's just another perspective, and I've tried to include a few other residents and people's perspectives, little snippets here and there that might be useful, that I'm not the only one. Anyway, I think that removing two residents here is not addressing the fundamental nature of the problem, which is Christina Gardner, executive director's borderline personality, probably. I think a specific and focused excision is what's indicated. So it is not up to me to decide what needs to be done. It's just up to me to my observations, and what is done about it is, my work is finished here, and there you go. Do with it what you want.